All right, CNT125, we're continuing our look at Chapter 10. We're on the section on malware risks. Malware, a reminder that's just short for malicious software. This is any type of software program that is designed to harm a system or data, that sort of thing. Viruses, Trojan horse, worms, bots, ransomware all fall under the category of malware. There are places out there that will track these and actually show you outbreaks of malware. Again, this might be something that in an IT company you're checking daily to see, is there anything out there that affects the operating system we're running, the software we're running, the types of computers we're running, the types of desktops we're running, that sort of thing. Looking at this and keeping an eye on this as a daily, if you will. Here's a Kaspersky site. Here's also a Sonic Wall site. I think these are ones that were mentioned in the book for you. I just put them out here so you could check them out if you wanted to. These would be places you can look for recent threats, recent things that might affect the resources at your facility. Well, let's take a look at each one of these real quickly. Virus. Program replicates itself, mainly targeting files, that sort of thing. Might damage files or system, might simply annoy the user, causing little weird things to occur. Trojan horse, this might be a program like a new game or something like that that looks like it's a legit thing to download and install, but it's actually a malicious software that's designed to do harm. Once upon a time, I think some point or another people have downloaded something and like, oh no, it's causing damage. And these could be simply Trojan horses. Years ago, I kind of separated out my games to my game console and my work to my laptop kind of thing to try to minimize affecting any kind of resources that I'm dealing with. Worm. This might these might be transferred to file transfers, email attachments, that sort of thing. They can alter programs, but they don't usually carry virus. They can carry viruses, but these actually kind of work their way through system to system. Because as you're moving files around, these might be moving along with those, and again, they might be holding on to something that would cause damage. Bot, short for robot, these could be beneficial or malicious. If we're thinking back to the denial of service attacks, if I get a virus that has a bot in, that might sit there idle until it gets activated, if you will, to distribute a denial of service attack on some entity. So these could just sit idle for a while until they get triggered or alerted to operate. Ransomware, this is a program that kind of like locks down your computer until you pay a ransom that you won't have access to data, etc. on your system. And these can be terrifyingly disruptive to, if something like a school or a school district or a hospital, gets a hold of this thing and kind of locks down all the resources that you can't have access to. And this is where if you have backups of systems, you might be able to wipe out what's there and load a known backup, and not lose any. You might lose a little bit of recent data, but you would have all of your other data, and you might be able to circumvent. In here, there's different things that can make malware harder to detect and eliminate. A lot of them will include, I should say, these are characteristics that can be included in malware. Some are individual, some are a combination of. Some malware is encrypted to prevent detection. It's harder to see what it is. It might disguise itself as a legitimate program or even replace part of legitimate program code with destructive code. It might look good initially, but then there's destructive code in there. In polymorphism, it might actually change its characteristics as it gets moved, increase, decrease, etc. And again, it's making it hard to identify and with that get rid of. And some might even be time dependent. It might not actually seem like any kind of malware until it gets triggered to activate a time, etc. And malware can exhibit any and all of those or a combination of. Again, there's places out there that have databases of malware and the latest threats and letting you know whether it's a high, medium, or low threat. This would be another thing that you'd be checking. Again, if you're part of an IT team, you might be, somebody else might be doing this job, but eventually this might be your job to be checking on this daily and looking, is this anything that affects systems that we have, programs we run, etc. And again, there might be a threat to a certain type of time clock software, and you're like, we don't use that. We don't use that at all, so it should not affect us at all. Okay, so now with malware, I should say now with malware behind us, as we get into risk assessment and management. Okay, so at some point you need to find out what kind of risk are we and what kind of things might disrupt our system. Now we're into the risk assessment and managing that. So security risk assessment evaluates the threats to and vulnerabilities of the network. What kind of vulnerabilities do we have? And then business risk, we're going to evaluate the impact of a potential threat on the business process. So if you have a network, we have a threat that affects part of the network. Let's say part of the network goes down. What does that do to affect the business? Will that directly affect business and being able to sell things, or is it the backup, if you will, that's not going to affect our daily business, but later on when we try to save or back up the data, what will it affect? So looking at what are we doing daily, and what security risk might affect the network, and how would it affect your business? Those all need to be evaluated. Your business process is the steps that accomplish a defined goal. So what do we do? Receiving an order, picking an order, packaging an order, delivering an order. That process, okay, I need to understand that process. But from an IT perspective, how do I need to make sure the network and things are working for them to achieve that, and what security risk in there would affect that process? Again, if it's a company picking products and packaging them and delivering them, maybe disrupting the database, they won't know if they have the part or not, and they're not sure if they can pick the part or not and fulfill the order. So looking at that, we need to look at what things network related would affect the business processes. Okay, and that's, you get your business process and your process business assessment. Business assessment processes and a business process, and the process assessment for that. Also need to look at the vendor risk assessment, security and compliance risks related to suppliers and vendors that we're interfacing with. What risks might they pose, or end up, network issue on our end affect them, communicating with them. And your posture assessment is the thorough examination of each of these, each aspect of the network to determine how it might be compromised. So looking very critically at your network and what risks there might be, to determine how that would affect processes, and again, eventually the business process. A security audit can be performed by a company that actually would be like a third-party company that comes in and looks at everything you have, and even does some tests against to see, are we doing everything we can, or are there things that we're missing? Are there things that we're missing that we should be doing? And some of this gets determined by regulations. Regulations often used to determine require auditing standards include, if you're dealing with any like credit card information, I would need to follow these standards. Am I doing A, B, and C with the credit card data, if you will, or payment data? Also, if I'm storing a lot of data, am I doing the right things to store that, keep it secure, etc.? So these would define things that I should or should not be doing, if you will. During a posture assessment, you might use some of the methods a hacker uses to identify cracks in security architecture. And these are some different types of attack simulations: vulnerability assessment, authenticated and unauthenticated, pen testing or penetration testing, and red team, blue team exercises to determine, do we have things in place? Are we responding to? So vulnerability assessment, you might actually have your security audit team, if you will, give the attacker an authenticated access to the network. So maybe create them an account and let them see, as a, maybe a new user, John Smith new user, what do they have access to? Can they get access to things that they should not? Have we put the account permissions in correctly? Have we, VLAN them off? Have we done enough firewall and or access lists kind of to quarantine them to their area? Are they able to get through some way? The other type of test would be the unauthenticated. So an outside user, what might they get access to? And they might start calling. They might start calling people going, hey, I'm having trouble. Can you help me reset my password? This is what I plugged in, but it doesn't seem to be working. What am I missing? What should I be using? And seeing if they can get information from the company. Side note, once upon a time at the college here, there was a scam going on, and this is pretty much before COVID, just to give you a time frame. There was a scam going on where an outside vendor would call in to verify an order, and I just want to verify this before we ship it. And what they were doing is they were verifying an order for toner cartridges. Well, most businesses have printers and toner cartridges, so it's like, okay, yeah, there's pretty much always a toner cartridge being ordered. And they were just, hey, can you help me verify the printer that you have there before I ship this? I just want to make sure I'm getting you the right toner cartridge. And if you caught somebody off guard, they go, oh yeah, it's a Toshiba blah blah blah. Okay, great, we'll ship that off for you. And what they were doing is literally shipping stuff that the college did not order, and it would show up and it would look like the right toner cartridge for the printer, so you'd sign off and away you go. And they were literally spoofing orders and causing this scam. So that there had to be some education from the college of like, hey, do not respond with this information, do not sign off on these orders, etc., etc. But it's easy to do. It's easy to do when you have a large facility. Penetration testing, various tools. I should say use various tools to find network vulnerabilities. From email, what can I gather that way? Using different tools to crack passwords. Are the passwords easy to crack? Air crack, monitor, manipulate wireless transmissions. Using different scanning tools, Metasploit, that sort of thing. What can I gather? Are we finding computers running old operating systems that might have a backdoor on? Using PowerShell scripts to perform multiple tasks on a system. Has that been disabled where it needs to be, and so forth? All kinds of different things that can be run. And again, on a security audit, you might be giving somebody authenticated or unauthenticated access, and they would be running these to see what can I gather, what can I gain. There might even be red team, blue team exercises where actually again your security audit people would be trying to attack your network, and your IT people would be trying to defend. Noticing, hey, there's a lot of attempts to try to find open port numbers. What are we going to do to respond to that? And then continue responding to try to stop and almost like be like a goalie to keep these attacks from coming in. This leads us to some scanning tools. Scanning tools can be very valuable, very useful, helpful in IT, but also a tool that your attacker could be using as well. Scanning tools can be used to discover all kinds of information, every available host on the network, services that are running on a host, software configurations, what version of, open, closed, filtered ports, type and placement configuration of firewalls, any software configs, unencrypted or poorly encrypted sensitive data. And again, all of these could be, and I'm going to scroll back here, used during these penetration testings. So we as IT should be using these kind of things to test on our own to see what we can see, to see if these are things we need to address, close, filter, deny, block, etc. And again, it would need to be a process. You don't just see it open port and block it. That might be needed for, a time clock system or people logging in or badge swiping or whatever. So there needs to be a team approach to it, but you might be using some of these as well. Things like Nmap, Nessus, and Metasploit. In our lab rooms, we'll actually be using Nmap to scan against our routers and firewalls to see what is open. And it should make sense. After we do some commands on the router and firewall to permit or deny traffic, when we run this, it should make sense. It should be seeing, oh, that got filtered, that got blocked. That should be making sense to you. But this would be something you run against desktop servers, routers, that sort of thing, and firewalls to know, is it blocking and denying what we need it to? Here's some other ones out here, your Nessus, as well as your Metasploit. Again, all usable for this purpose. What is open, what is available, what is closed, what is filtered. And again, in the name of, I'm looking for anything that might be open that shouldn't be, and then I bring it to attention of our crew and find out, is that needed to be open? How are we going to go about closing this to make sure that it's no longer a open port, if you will, or open vulnerability? All right, we'll come back in the next podcast and keep talking security utilities, if you will.